I thought we'd get into some of the
Good.
alien and UFO madness we've been seeing in the mainstream and get your thoughts on that, as well as some of the other things that are unfolding that are in the background that we can touch on as well. So if that sounds good.
Yeah,
All right, sweet. All right. Well, I've already pre-recorded your introduction. I'll just
good.
start with Jay. Welcome back, and we'll get right into it. Stand by. Let me check your mic level real quick.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 5,
Perfect.
6.
Perfect. All right. And by. Man, my dogs sound like horses upstairs.
Yeah. We call our dog Roar because they're so loud.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw your dog is beautiful. All right, stand by. Here we go. Three, two, one. Jay, welcome back. How you doing?
I'm doing really good. How are you?
I'm excellent, man. I can't complain. I can't complain. This is always a fun conversation. And today I want to get your insights into some of the events being witnessed and unfolding in consensus reality right now, like aliens landing in Vegas, UFOs being reported on a daily basis in the news. And all of this is really coinciding a declining social environment in which people on a mass scale are becoming aware that they're not only being deceived by our medical, pharmaceutical, education, and media, but reality itself has much more to offer than we have previously realized. And we've been suppressed from every angle. So we live in very interesting times with everything unfolding at the same time. Now, we got a lot to get into. Before we do, for those that may not be familiar, just remind them a little about yourself and your work.
Well, let's see. I'm a filmmaker and a researcher, writer, author, written 2 books and with Vincent Bridges, who is now deceased. And I'm a very, very curious person about this particular plane of existence.
Yes, very, very well said. Well, Jay, what are your thoughts on? Let's start with the first thing I mentioned, the UFO phenomena seemingly being it's expanded into the mainstream. And on a daily basis, like I said, we seem to see some kind of article or news report or something happening surrounding aliens and UFOs. There's many that speculate that we're being built up for some sort of fake invasion type of situation. Others believe that it is actually extraterrestrials. What are your thoughts on this?
I would go with the fake alien invasion, giant psyop. They can't, because they've gone too far, they can never go back. That's what we all have to come to realize. They've gone too far. And since they've gone too far, if they ever relinquish power to anyone else, that other else is going to discover exactly what happened. And so they can't allow any of it to happen. And so I don't see how, say, Biden can give up power. If he can't, because as soon as someone looks under the rock, they're going to see what the Bidens have been doing, and he can't allow that. And so the same thing with all the war in Ukraine. As soon as we start looking at the real cause of the war, and the idea that possibly the president of the United States is, being compromised by the leaders in Ukraine, you realize that that can't be stopped. In other words, the war can't be stopped. One side has to beat the other. It doesn't matter. It will go on until that happens. They've gone too far, and since they've gone too far, they now have to bring out the alien card, and they're playing the alien card right now. And to me, it's freaking obvious. So I don't know, and I look at it like, oh, bull crap. This is the biggest bunch of bull crap I've ever seen. And
Well, anytime our own government tells us something is true, you
yep.
just have to look at their past track record for everything else.
Yeah, exactly, man. That's exactly right. So it's a psyop. It's orchestrated. It's clear. Somebody behind it who I don't know. I don't really care. The UFOs are really interesting, and a lot of them might be coming from some other civilization, advanced civilization, or even aliens, and I don't know that. But if you YouTube the term UFOs, the first 200 videos that you see are just amorphous lights, and there's no hard craft there. There's very few videos of hard craft, and when they are, it's kind of obvious that they're ours in our secret space program and things. And we know they had the B-1 jet 20 years before they announced it. People saw it, and so I don't know. I'm at that point where I wouldn't believe an alien invasion if they put it on TV and I saw it.
Right. Well, how far do you think they're going to take this? Because I've had experiencers and guests and researchers that claim that, even some of the folks I've talked to themselves, that claim that they've had experiences where they know it wasn't extraterrestrials taking them there, where they'd be abducted, brought somewhere else, and they would have not only what they perceived as non-human entities there, but military personnel.
Yep.
And this seems to happen on a larger scale than what we would understand as real abduction or contact phenomena, and it seems to be orchestrated on a large level. Do you think that they've been doing this for a long time to perpetuate the upcoming UFO narrative that they may have had to use?
Yeah, the abduction and all of that has to be understood in a context that really no one really discusses. And that is the first thing you have to understand is there's a very close connection between the occult underground and the intelligence agencies. And there's always has been. Okay. Initially, it started out that the intelligence agencies used occult terms to talk about things so that no one understood what they were saying. But what they did was they kind of got married. And it's been a long marriage. It started in like the 1880s when the Office of Naval Intelligence was dickering around with Theosophy and Madame Blavatsky. Okay. And so what they did was they realized that there were these schools, mystery schools all over the world. And these mystery schools' basic idea was what they eventually wanted to achieve was interdimensional contact. And so they did that, and they got into interdimensional contact with entities, and they opened up portals that let these entities in. The most famous being L. Ron Hubbard and Jack
Parsons.
Parsons, thank you.
Parsons. Yeah.
Opening up the hole in the Mojave Desert in the 1950s with a DOD representative, Marjorie Cameron. She worked for the DOD before she came out to California and joined Parsons and Hubbard. Hubbard was also an ONI agent. So you see this milieu is always there.
Yes, they also had those elite societies that contacted the entities known as the Nine that supposedly Gene Roddenberry based a lot of Star Trek episodes off of, and they said they were these non-corporeal beings that throughout the ages led humanity in different directions, which is very interesting, and even posed as gods at times.
Yeah, and they had what's his name? The guy that owned Bell Helicopter was part of that group.
Yeah.
And, the guy Andrea Uharich, who was a CIA and also a psychic and was working with Uri Geller. And so we have to understand the dynamic here. So these entities are getting in, and they let them in, and they let them in on purpose. And then these entities start doing stuff in the exterior world, the 3D world, and they have to find some kind of explanation for it, right? So they sent out a cadre of first wave writers who claimed that it was all aliens, like Bud Hopkins and all those guys. And I had a long conversation with Bud Hopkins once, and he's a really great guy. I'm sorry that he died. Um, but he's wrong. I mean, he's wrong. And the military is involved in it. At the upper echelons of the military, we know from the Presidio incidents with I'm not even going to say his name, that they're the military and the Satanists and the cult people are all, and intelligence are all in this one group. And their whole purpose is interdimensional contact to get information, intelligence, right? That's what they're doing. And so this is where the remote viewing programs come from and all of it. And once you understand the connection between this advanced occultic lore, and this project's been going on since Napoleon, at least, okay? And that's like, it has to be understood that this is a almost over 200-year-old project, and to understand the occult and to contact interdimensional entities to get information. And what they did, because they're very naive, and because the true masters who actually understand all of this have withdrawn from society and are hidden now, and they want nothing to do with us anymore, because that happened. That happened in the 20s. They withdrew and finally completely withdrew in the 20s. We've had no one since then who's been dispensing any advanced knowledge at all. And everything that they've done and are doing is based on these occult discoveries. So they think that the world is coming to come to an end soon, that the sun's going to blow up and fry the earth. And it may. I mean, that's what the Cross of Henday talks about. My two books are about. And I think they're just like going for broke. The secret space program and deep underground military bases and the deficits and the endless spending and no responsible thing, because they don't think there's going to be a future. It's clearly obvious. It's clearly
now
obvious.
all these operations are so compartmentalized. The right hand will never know what the left hand is doing. With a lot of different departments and military divisions, they have no idea what each other's doing. And now in modern times, it seems that a lot of this stuff has been outsourced to aerospace companies and different divisions of the military industrial complex. And they seem very interested. When you look at things like Skinwalker Ranch, I have a friend who's got a bunch of NDAs signed because aerospace companies are out there interested in the phenomena that's occurring out there and probably most likely trying to weaponize it. So if you look back at the technology and information that may have been given by these entities to our government and military industrial complex, that's terrifying, because we know it's already probably 50, 100 years ahead of anything we could ever imagine. But what have they already been implementing into our reality that we don't know about?
Yeah, I had a really, really good friend. He was my mentor, you might say. He was about 25 years older than me, and he died recently. And he told me a story. He said he went to a New Age conference, like in the mid 70s, when there wasn't really much New Age around. And he gave a lecture to a group of people on sacred geometry. He was an expert on sacred geometry. And he was showing the relationship between the Ayakasa and the dodecahedron. And it was a really complex lecture based on ancient Egyptian knowledge. And he got done with the lecture, and he's kind of putting all of his toys away and everything. This guy walks up to him, and the guy's got a crew cut, and he's about 6'2". It doesn't look like a New Age or anybody, like a hippie or anything. And he walks up to me, he says, "I want to thank you. You helped me with my project. In fact, I've solved my problem." And my friend goes, "Well, what are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, I work for the Pentagon. I work for DARPA, and I'm trying to find a way to create nanoparticles that can fit into the weapon systems that we're building. And I realized that the Icasa Dodeca system is the best way for me to perfect this weapon system. And I just wanted to thank you. And my friend was like friggin' devastated, right? He was like anti-war and was just like, holy crap, I'm giving out sacred information, and there's military industrial complex people in the audience writing down what I'm saying and using it and weaponizing it. And that's what and so that's going on everywhere. And until we understand the occult, intel, military marriage, we won't understand UFOs. And so the military is simultaneously has a secret space program in which they're flying around in Mach 20, taking right angle turns and stuff, and people see it and they say, well, what is that? Then they send out their agent who says, oh, the Arcturians you had a contact with the Arcturians. And once you see it everywhere. And I actually went up to one of these guys one time. They were telling these people who had seen a UFO that, you had been in contact. And I walked up and I said, it's so friggin' obvious that's your intel. And he looked like he was ashamed of himself. He didn't say he was intel, but he just had to look like I busted him, right? And he kind of backed off from these people and doing what he was doing to them. But I mean, there really is stuff floating around in outer space and flying around, and there could very well be a very close by advanced civilization. Civilization does not get crushed by the last catastrophe, somehow survived and kept all of its equipment and has been kind of messing with human beings ever since.
Yeah, that sounds likely. And this makes me think of the Camellia story, because if you think they've been messing with people for a long time like this, if you've ever read Camellia by Robert Guffey, it's basically tells the story of this very thing, harassment and illegal surveillance, but with extremely advanced exotic technology that they're using on this individual, to the extent to where they were making him believe that aliens were coming visit him, that he was having abduction experiences, that he had poltergeists in his house. And the kicker was, to tie it back to the occult, the individual who developed some of the cloaking technology they were using was an occultist and very high level Freemason, that his technology was stolen from him by the military industrial complex. So it all goes back around.
Absolutely great book. Yeah. In fact, you remind me, I want to interview Guffey about that.
I've got him coming on next week.
Oh, if you could give me his contact, I'd love to interview him.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll let you do it first, but in a couple of months I want to interview him because I love that book. And I love the part where the poor dude, he's shaving and he looks in the mirror and he sees the invisible. And then they took that idea and they made the great movie The Invisible Man. Have you seen that one?
Yes.
That's a great horror film. And they use that same technique, that same camouflaging technique in that movie. But here's the thing, they do have that technology. They have it. Mm-hmm. They can walk into your house, follow you in right behind you, and be inside your house. And now here's the thing, they still cast shadows. So that's important to know. So if you think somebody is actually in your house with the cloaking technology, just shine a flashlight. If you see a human shadow, you got it. And that was a great book. And
that was in the 90s. So you just think about how advanced the technology is now.
I would say they probably have like a paint now that does the same thing. It's just like that's incredible. Nano paint, has nano cameras and nano screens, right? Millions of them. I guess it'd still be easier to make a cloak in your clothing, but that's how it works. So the camera is showing you, the monitor is showing you what the camera on my back is seeing, right? So I'm invisible, essentially. Yeah. And but I'm sure now their technology is so far advanced that I don't know, man. I think they know everything.
it makes you wonder how much of paranormal activity people are experiencing, especially when it comes to UFOs and abduction experiences, is our nefarious black projects trying to perpetuate dark agendas to bring us into this new era.
Yeah, I was talking to a Native American a couple weeks ago, and he told me that at the secret lab there in New Mexico, um, they that the experiments escape occasionally, and so they'll have these very strange, animals and hybrids
Oh,
running around, and the Native Americans will shoot them if they see them, and the Navajo Rangers will, you're always getting these reports of these strange critters running around, and there I've actually seen one of these invisible creatures, these humanoids that are invisible. I actually saw one in like maybe 1990. I was driving my car in the forest in a dark, the moon was just coming up, and I saw this humanoid run across the road in front of me. It was short too. And in that book, they say that they like the subjects to be short. And this thing,
short, small, yeah.
yeah, this thing was about 4 foot, 4.5 feet, and I could see it. It was the moonlight
My.
was reflecting off of it in just sort of way that I could see it. And there's a lot of reports of people. There's YouTube videos of people out in the woods, and they see these things walking through the woods that look sort of like predator like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
And yeah, I don't know if they're black ops. It could be. I don't know. But people have been reporting them long before there was high technology. So,
Well, that's interesting. If there are chimera or hybrid type creatures, could this maybe explain what a lot of people consider cryptids, dogmen, maybe Bigfoot? I don't know.
well, think about it. If when the Spanish conquered Mexico in the 1500s, that what they did was they had a like 300 dogs with them. Okay, and these were big, huge dogs, bulldogs, and they would put swords around their necks and swords pointing out the top of their head. They would have the whole body would be covered with swords sticking out. They would the Spanish would grab three or four natives. They would let the dogs starve for like 3 days. Then they would throw the natives into the dogs. The dogs, of course, would eat them and get a taste for them. And then, as the Aztecs were lining up to fight, they unleashed the 300 dogs. Okay. And so these Aztecs got little spears, and they're sitting there looking at 300 ferocious, vicious animals that are hungrier than hell coming at them. And so I would say that Dogman was probably developed as a weapon. I mean, if you were, in Afghanistan and you were in the caves there and they unleashed a bunch of dogmen, that would be, not only would that be the most terrifying experience you probably ever have, but you would tell everybody if you lived through it. And so they would.
Yeah.
So I think that that's what that is. I think that they're chimeras developed by the military and let loose. Not Bigfoot. Bigfoot was here. We have stories of Bigfoot going back all the way to the first white people, and the Native Americans say was here for thousands of years before they were here. And I know Bigfoot exists because I have a good friend, 4 good friends who actually saw one, and here in my area. And so that's what I think Dogman is. I think Dogman is just a super fast, ferocious weapon.
That's really interesting. I have a witness that I've been interviewing for my upcoming documentary about occult Louisiana, and a big part of it's going to be the cryptid creatures that reside there. And several people have had encounters with these dogmen or werewolf creatures. But I have one main witness who's had experiences with these where they'll psychically communicate with him since the first contact he's had. He's just a hunter, regular guy that never heard of any of this stuff until he was out hunting one day for a deer, and he came across a Bigfoot. He saw the Bigfoot through his rifle scope, and near the Bigfoot was a dog man, and they started psychically communicating with him and arguing amongst themselves. if the dog man could go up there and tear him apart and kill him. And the Bigfoot was kind of saving his life, saying, no, he's not there to shoot us. It was a very incredible experience. And he's had several encounters with some of these creatures after that. But he said the dog man seems to be subservient in some ways to the Bigfoot creatures, which I found very interesting.
Yeah, maybe the Bigfoot just lets him live there, feel sorry for him because he knows he's this. Although, I will say Marco Polo, in his writings, he says that there was an island off the coast of China that where all the people had dog heads. And we know about Anubis, the Egyptian god. So again, I don't know. But if there were these hybrids, they probably died out. But the military, anyone who has a dog knows that dogs are really psychic. I mean, scary psychic. And, to the point where they're thinking ahead of you, going get stuff that you just thought of. And so if you were developing these dog men as weapons, then you would want to increase their intelligence to the point where they could have psychic abilities and be able to strike fear in you so that they don't have to kill you, right? You only kill what you have to kill. You can get the people to run from you. And everybody that encounters a dog man says the first thing they do when they see it is I'll get the hell out of here. Right.
Yeah.
I don't want to see one.
That makes me think of, I interviewed Rick Doty, who we all know is a counterintelligence officer and probably still well embedded within the intelligence community, embedded within the UFO community. Well, I was talking to him at a conference a while back, and he, of course, was telling this elaborate story about how this creature escaped from Area 51 and killed people. But it makes me think maybe there really was a creature, maybe not at Area 51, but we might have engineered this thing and it escaped and maybe killed some people. Maybe he embellished a little bit like he probably is supposed to be doing right now with this whole operation. But it's very interesting.
Yeah, and it's not just for weapons. China is trying to develop like 6 foot tall chickens, right? That can feed, 1,000 people. Pigs the size of elephants, right? And some of these are going to get loose. In fact, I've heard rumors that they already are, and that the Chinese military had to go into the forest and shoot down a whole bunch of chickens that were loose, that were, believe me, you do not want to be chased by a 6 to 8 foot tall chicken.
No shit.
Yeah, my chickens, if a mouse gets into my chicken coop, my chickens rip that thing to shreds. I don't want anyone to ever tell me that chickens are vegetarians.
Yeah.
They definitely are not. So
that's terrifying having to come across it.
So I think that's what we're also coming up against. It's not just military, but GMO farming companies trying to increase productivity and all of that. So we're up against a whole bunch of stuff. We're now 18 months into the age of Aquarius. We are seeing the Pisces world falling apart. We know what the 2,000 years of the Pisces world was like. It was all top down, pyramid structure, overwhelm your enemy, destroy everything with might and force. And now everything's falling apart. I just got done with a 3.5-week tour of the West, California, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, and Colorado. And I can tell you the federal interstate system is falling apart completely. As far as the states, Arizona's roads are the worst roads I've ever been on in my whole life. New Mexico's were the next worst roads I've ever seen. California's were absolutely awful. Utah's roads and Colorado roads were actually almost okay. But man, those roads are so bad that they're going to cause accidents. I mean, I got jerked over to the left side and to the right side because there's just potholes everywhere. everywhere I went. And I had to slow down. I couldn't even do the speed limit. And I had a truck. I can't imagine when you go out there with a regular car, what would be left of that car after driving around in the West. And I don't know what the rest of the country is like. If, in fact, why don't you tell us?
Mm.
What are the
It
roads
seems with
like?
all their attempts to try and rein in complete power and take that main power grab in 2020 that they screwed themselves and everything is falling apart now. We have more people waking up and they're just hemorrhaging funds that they don't even have anymore to try and keep these psychological operations going, and it just doesn't seem to be working anymore. But
No.
the side effect is everything is going to fall apart though.
Well, here's also the thing. Um, they did a whole psyop where they wanted to separate men from women, and it worked.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
now you have a 25-year-old guy who's perfectly able-bodied to work, and he's like, well, why should I work? I'm never
Yeah.
going to have a wife. I'm never going to have kids. Nobody wants me. Why should I work? And so they don't work.
Mm.
And 20 years ago, there was a chance that he could score. So he would go out and work and try to get a job. And so he'd become like useful to the woman. But now, the woman's going to making twice as much as him at her corporate job. And she doesn't want, poor scumbag. She wants, a guy who's making as much money as her. So,
Yeah.
so you're seeing the um, heartbreaking failure of young men who have lost their way, and I don't blame them. Honestly, I don't
Mm.
blame them at all. I'd do the same friggin' thing if I was their age, with being treated the way that they've been treated. And so they're not working. They're not going to drive truck. Why would you take a dangerous truck driving job in those bad roads where anything you do will be your fault? And you have to work 14 hours a day. You're away from home all the time when you could just go be a pot trimmer, for during the summer, making cash and have enough money to live for the rest of the year. And so there's just no incentive for anyone to work anymore. And
Mm.
they're giving, in the advertising world, is giving women the idea that they can do the men's work. So there's like women that are mechanics and they're driving the big trucks and everything. And it's like those jobs require super amount of upper body strength. I'm not saying that women
Mm.
can't do it, but the men have much more upper body strength than women. And those jobs require that. Driving a truck, holding that wheel. I was a truck driver for a whole summer one time. That job blows, let me tell you.
Well,
People
on top of
jumping in
that,
front of
there's
you.
also the attempt to feminize men
Yep.
with the toxic masculinity agenda
Yep.
and out the trans agenda, everything else that's surrounding that. So men are being demoralized at all angles. And you're
Yep.
right. Who would want to work in an environment like that? And on top of that, all the jobs are being replaced, especially autonomous jobs and mechanical jobs and things like that are all being replaced by computers anyway and AI. And that's
Ah,
another level that we have to face.
well, that's interesting. They did an analysis of the jobs that are going to be taken by AI, and 90% of them are women's jobs.
Mm,
Hmm.
interesting.
Yep. And you're still going to need somebody, like I say to everybody, AI will never make a good documentary. So I'm not worried, right? I'm not
Right,
worried
right,
about
right,
my
right.
job or anything because I know how to make good films and I'll continue to make good films. And AI can't do that. AI can assist me in doing it, but I'm not worried. So I'm not really worried about AI. Not at all, actually. I think
Mm,
AI can be used for bad things and it will be. But AI is really clunky and actually stupid. I mean, I've been in arguments with ChatGTP and I won every argument. I actually got it to change its mind or at least come up with a phony excuse for why it was wrong. Right. And so I'm not worried about it. I don't think it'll ever achieve sentience or anything like that. I'm more worried about, uh, like robot weapons. Um,
mm.
you know, if they're going to weaponize, Dog Man, what would they do with a robot dog? What
Well,
was
there's
that?
some that believe that what is happening behind Chat GPT could possibly be a replacement for all search engines on the internet,
Yep.
to where
That's
it
right.
will only pull up
Yep.
approved articles,
Yep.
basically,
It's not going to
to where
work.
we can't do our own research anymore, you know?
But anybody can create the rival AI. So there's going to be 100 different AI systems, and they will
Mm,
examine each other. It's going to be really kind of amazing. The next one that
mm,
comes out will begin examining Chat GTT and then doing a critique of it, right?
yeah.
Where it's wrong and where it's right. And so um, the competing AI systems there will be winners and losers. And the one that is the most honest and gives you the most complete information is going to be the winner, because that's all we
Mm.
want. We don't want your BS. So if you're going to give me BS, I don't want you. And everybody thinks that way. So that's what's going to happen. And so everybody's making, everybody's doing it. Everybody's making rival AI systems now. All the money's pouring into it. And I don't know, should we really be doing all that, those kinds of work that AI can do? I think it's okay that AI takes the jobs away. I think that human beings need to release their creative power, and we're not doing that. And we're so mind controlled because we've been in an MK Ultra operation since the early 1950s that we don't even know how to think anymore.
Mm. Yeah, I think you're definitely right when it comes to the creative aspects of what AI is trying to do, especially with music and entertainment. It'll never elicit that emotional response that human creativity can bring. So we should never have to worry about that taking over. But people are seeking more truth and entertainment, more realism, and they're turning away from Hollywood and the
Yep.
BS that Netflix is bringing. And even music, people are not listening to
No, they're
the
not.
manufactured music that just goes by a formula that worked for a while for certain people, but it's just all falling apart, like you said.
Yeah, I was in my travels over the last month. I had my Sirius XM going, and I found channel 35, which is indie music on Sirius XMU, I think it's called. And so through the whole trip, I got to listen to hundreds and hundreds of new bands and music, and there's tons of really good music out there right now. But the
Mhm.
organized, corrupt um, system that makes our music doesn't play it, doesn't give these artists any money or help. And so these guys are living hand to mouth, but they're very, very, very talented people. All of them were. And I was very happy to see that there was a cultural, kind of an underground culture of really good music going on. And so I
Mm.
highly recommend that station on Sirius XM. I think it's channel 35. It's all new music and it's all indie. There's no big corporate bands on it, and it was just really refreshing.
It's the same thing with what we're seeing on YouTube and the big platforms. They're
Yep.
only promoting just like dog and cat videos, mindless entertainment, the stupidest stuff you could think of. They will prop up and they'll get millions and millions of views and subscribers. But channels like ours, real information that people are interested in, it, intelligent conversations, they're all being suppressed and pushed down. And that's
Yeah.
across the board with all the big
Oh,
platforms.
absolutely. It's absolutely right. There's no doubt about it. I went to the UFO conference in California. What was it called? Contact in the Desert.
Yeah, Contact Desert.
And if as many people came up to me and told me that they'd watch my show, I should have, I don't know, 300,000 subs. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and I was thinking, oh, well, I think YouTube, I said to some guy, I said, I think YouTube's suppressing me. He just burst out laughing. Like, of course they're suppressing you, you dummy. And and then they are. They don't want intelligent conversation. I got a strike on YouTube for my what I thought was a great show on Catcher in the Rye, how it's a secret Masonic initiatory book, and that's why the killers are always reading it. right after they kill whoever they are, like John Lennon and the guy that shot Ronald Reagan. He was reading Catcher in the Rye, but they didn't like it, so they gave me a strike, and I had to re-edit the whole damn thing, take all the good stuff out of it. So yeah, we were all being suppressed, but at the same time, we already know. We all know what's going on, and we know they know that we know, and uh where this ends is probably not going to be a good place, but
Mm,
it'll be a better place after that. So,
mm,
like for instance, I went to every year I take this trip around the Western United States. Just something I like to do. It's in the end of spring when it's warm out. And last year, every town I went to had pride flags everywhere. This time, no town had any. That told me
mm,
a lot. And so, what I think, and I, I try to keep my hand on the collective pulse, and I felt like about 2 or 3 months ago, I felt like mostly men um, had all reached a collective um, knowledge, and that was okay. You told us to shut up. You told us that we were the cause of all the problems. So we shut up and we watched what you were going to do. We watched what world you were going to replace the world that we were doing with. And now we've seen it and we're done with your nonsense. We are freaking
mm.
done with your nonsense. We're going to call you out for every turn from here on out. And I really think it started about 3 months ago. And I know it happened with me. I don't, boom, I'm not sure what it was. I think it was Biden saying that the trans people were the bravest people on earth. I think just something in me snapped so hard when I heard it that, and I have nothing against trans people, but brave, I don't know about brave. I think being under fire in Iraq, that's brave, but I don't know about getting surgeries as being brave. But and I don't even understand the context. But I think something just broke, and the whole thing just snapped apart. And men just are stood up and said, "No, no, we're done. You can crap in your nest, and that's fine with me. But now your crap is rolling into my nest, and
Mm.
I'm not going to have that because you see, I'm not mentally ill, so I
Well,
have to stop the crap."
none of
Yeah,
those agendas are there to actually help people. They
no,
don't give a crap about the LGBTQ community
at
or
all.
trans people at all. It's all about weakening the country. It's about weakening the world. It's about weakening men, making us easier to control, and eventually changing what we are fundamentally as humans. So maybe we can be integrated with technology and controlled even further. Who knows what the end game is, but it is about control and weakening us as humans.
Yeah, the whole interacting with technology and all that. I don't know. I was talking to a neurologist, and he told me that if you stuck something into your brain, that your brain would begin misfiring, and pretty soon scar tissue would develop all around where that implant is, and your whole brain would just begin to malfunction completely. He said you can't put stuff, your brain is a really soft tissue, you can't put stuff like that in there, and they know this. So I don't know if any of that's going to work out. Maybe they'll have a patch or something, but I don't even know if that's going to work.
Mm,
Human beings should not be around high electromagnetic fields. It's not really very good for you. So
yeah.
I feel the same way about electric vehicles. I got into electric vehicle with electromagnetic meter. Man, that thing shot all the way to the right and go all the way into the red. And I looked at the guy and said, "Look at what your Prius is doing." He's like,
Oh
"Holy
man.
crap." So I don't believe that electric future is going to happen. I don't,
Mm.
I don't know if we're ruled by idiots
Well, yeah,
are
it's none of
ruled
it's
by,
sustainable.
yeah,
Why?
no,
How are they coming up with the? It's like they have been sheltered and they have this ideological view of how the world should be, but they've never had any real world experience. They have no
none.
idea what the world is really like, so they're
None.
just basing this off of a fantasy that they've been living in forever.
That's right. And you can't talk them out of it because it's a religion. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's a
And
cult.
so, yeah, it's a cult. It's a giant cult. And they have all their cult beliefs, and they're taking us towards this future that can't happen. And what it really is it's the dystopian, excuse me, it's the dystopian um, carnage at the end of the age. So, Pisces was in charge, and Aquarius started rising, and the Pisceans said that the Aquarians were conspiracy theorists and anti-vaxxers and crazies, and we got to lock them up and take their children away from us. And we saw it. We saw them say it. We saw them say, "Hey, wait a minute! Just because I didn't take that stuff, they want to take my kids away from me? Really?"
Yeah.
Really, that's who they are. And I can tell you, in my circles, I have seen nobody go from um Aquarian to Piscean. I've only seen people going from Piscean to Aquarians, some with such a fervor that is shocking, where they were pro Obama, anti Trump, screaming at people, and now are the biggest conspiracy theorists on earth. So I don't know what's going on, but I know when I go to YouTube and I look at all the shows, I say I really don't even have to do a show anymore. These people are all taking over. They're all running with the baton, and I'm all for it. Go for it. I want as many
Yeah.
people speaking out about this BS as we can get, and so I'm very happy that there's been this kind of upsurge in all of this, and regular folks, that look like Republicans or bankers and corporate people are now kind of coming on board. So it's really curious what's going on here, and now women are coming on board, whereas it was mostly just a male kind of thing until about three, yeah, when the COVID started. That's when the women began coming on board with the with on our side, actually. And so our side is going to build a sustainable uh, future that's going to be low tech, but we'll keep our high tech. I'm not saying we're not going to lose our high tech, but the culture itself, it will be low tech. It'll be, like acoustic music. It'll be local farming, local water, homeschooling. This is what we're going to have to do. If you understand mathematics, you're going to have to go teach kids, 3 days a week or whatever. And it's going to be more of a voluntary society, and we're going to be self-protecting. We're not going to have any more police. That's going to go away. They just won't be there. I mean, nobody's going to want to be a policeman. It's just too difficult. You go to jail if you're a policeman. And besides, gas prices are not going to go away. They're going to keep going up. So it's going to be harder and harder for police to even get around. They're not going to be able
Yeah.
to.
I tend to agree that we are the majority here, but I think there's still going to be a large portion of your woke people out there that want to participate in the matrix system, that want to keep eating that steak, that are going to be plugged into your smart cities and living that lifestyle. So we're going to have probably two different timelines simultaneously going, with folks like us living outside of the big cities, living our own lives, not participating in the nonsense. And then you have your woke crowd who are just plugged into it, but we won't have anything to do with each other at the same time.
Yeah, and because Hollywood has propagandized this idea that people out in the country are all dangerous hicks who are
Horror
stupid.
movies and stuff.
Yeah, they don't
Yeah.
want to come out here. They think that it's dangerous. I've actually talked to people and said, "Oh, where do you live? Are you surrounded by KKK?" I'm like, "No, I've never met a KKK person anywhere where I live. They're mostly just a bunch of hippies, right?" And
Yeah.
so they have this whole idea, and so they're terrified to go out in the country. the urban people are terrified of us. They're terrified. They
Mm.
think we're hicks. They think we're going to shoot them. In some cases, we might. But
Yeah.
and so I think the whole so if they were going to do like a like during the COVID, everybody goes, oh, they're going to do door-to-door vaccinations, right? And they're going to come to your house. And I said, I don't think you understand what people are like in the country. First off,
Yeah.
it's a 400-yard walk from my mouth of my driveway to my house. And I've got dogs and I got gates and I've got video cameras. And you are not getting on my property without making a lot of noise. So, and that's the way we are in the country. It's not going to happen. And the guy isn't even going to get close to my house. Okay.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
when I come out with my concealed carry permit, then he's going to see that if he comes any further, there's going to be other kinds of trouble that will erupt. So I'm glad that they propagandize the urban people. And I also know, and I feel bad about this, but all the things that they are going to do in the future on that side, that woke side, it's going to kill them. They're all going to have early deaths
Yeah.
because you can't live that kind of life. You can't put machines into your body. Your body's not made for that. And so that's really it. This is the war between the Pisceans and the Aquarians. And right now the Pisceans are trapped in the cities.
Mm.
And when I say trapped, I mean trapped. And it's getting more and more difficult to move out of the cities because no one's going to buy your house. So they are trapped. And
Yeah.
I know people that live in San Francisco. Their house a year ago, or no, 2 years ago, was worth 1.2 million. They bought it for 200,000, by the way, and it was worth 1.2 million. And now it's worth 650, and next year it'll be worth 500. And it's been for sale for 3 years now, and no one's even offered anything on it.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Now, what do you think about when I look the one of the things that I really wish the last few of us would catch up with is those that still believe in the system politically, still believe that they can still get someone in that presidential seat that could make a difference somehow. If we could just get those last few people who can see that there's a conspiracy, can see that there's a problem, if we could convert them to realize that no one is there to save them from these problems but themselves, then we can finally maybe get a little bit further in this.
Yeah, I think people don't realize is that we have two sets of government here. We have the constitutional government, which every state's involved in. Like Colorado has its own government, and it rules over the land that is not owned by the feds, which is only about 48% of the state, by the way. And Washington, D.C. And Washington, D.C. is a separate country from the United States of America. It's it has its own law enforcement, its own military. Once you step over that line and go into DC, you're subjected to a whole different set of rules than you are, say, in Colorado or Iowa or whatever. So the people that owe all the money are the DC people. Iowa doesn't owe the money on the debt. Montana doesn't owe any money on the debt. DC owes all the money. The 70 trillion or whatever it is, people vary, might be 30. I think it's more like 100 trillion, but it doesn't matter. That's all owed by them. They owe it, and they're going to have to come up with that money someday. You can default on it, I guess. That would be the end of DC. So they don't want to do that. So they have to do something else. And that something else is they've got to find some way to pay the debt off. And the only way that they can do that is by taking over all of the states. Now, to take over all of the states would require a constitutional crisis. So they're doing everything they can to foment that constitutional crisis so they can say, see, they're not responsible for they aren't taking responsibility for their actions. We have to go in there and take over. And that's the plan. So that's the only way that they're going to be able to pay off the debt. So they have a choice. I can default, and then we lose everything in DC. They will lose the national parks. We'll lose everything that DC has. Okay. Or they can do what I just said. And since they don't want to lose, then slowly they're going to do what I am saying here. And we have to be cognizant of the fact that they're trying to cause a societal disruption, to cause so much chaos that we demand they come in and take over the situation. That's kind of the scenario they're trying to create here, and we have to not let that happen.
Another encouraging thing that I've noticed is it's like a 100th monkey effect with people developing and realizing their own free energy type of technology.
Yeah.
I've had several friends just within the past 5 years that claim to have cracked this technology, anti-gravity, whatever is considered this etheric free energy. They've actually had inventions, and they're working with what they feel reputable companies to try and develop sustainable free energy and not weaponize it. It's very hard. A lot of people are having their lives threatened. They have to go through extreme means to try and protect some of this information. But I don't think that our government, military, industrial complex can stay ahead of it for that much longer. I think it's going to keep occurring. We're going to keep developing our own free energy technologies, and eventually we will be able to break away from this system no matter what.
I've heard that the government has decided, just like with marijuana, that they're not going to mess with it anymore. They're done with it. That's what I've heard. Now, if it's torsion based, they might care about that. But if it's free energy that's not torsion based, I think that's okay. Like magnetic energy, you can use magnets. You can use it's essentially electromagnetic energy. You take say 100,000 volt capacitor and then a 30,000 volt capacitor, and you hang them from a bar right in the air, and then you charge them up. The 100,000 one will, and then you start turning it. The 100,000 volt capacitor will begin pushing the smaller one, repelling it. Right. And this thing just starts turning on its own. And it's until the parts wear out, you've got your energy machine. And I actually, this will be seen, because at night they'll leave an ion trail. You'll see a blue ion trail in the while it's circling. But I talked to the mayor of a town near my ranch in Colorado, and I told her about it. She was a scientist down at Los Alamos, and she's like, let's build it. So I may actually build it. And so I think this is going to happen all over the place. I think it's going to happen the same way that gays got accepted and marijuana got accepted. It's just people are just saying, yeah, screw it. We're just going to do it. And we're not going to care what anybody thinks. And I think that's where this is going. Very Aquarian kind of idea.
That could cause very painful outcomes to the system if we continue to head in that direction, because that's a big sector that we're not relying on daddy government and our military industrial complex anymore for.
Yeah, but the thing is that they're tearing down all the coal plants. In Colorado, we'll be done with them in, I think, a year or so. The last one will be torn down. And so they're all relying on solar, and solar doesn't work. And wind doesn't work. Yeah. So, and it's not sustainable. You know how much it costs to make a solar panel, how much energy it takes? And so it's not sustainable. And so I think that they actually know that none of this can work. And so they're going to, at the same time that they're saying, oh, we can't have coal powered plants, we can't have oil powered plants, and we got to go to sustainable, they're easing off on the free energy stuff. I can sense it, because I know people that do free energy, and they're telling me, wow, this is kind of the freest atmosphere I've ever seen. So I think they know that we're going to be out in the country and we're going to need our own power source, and none of the above works. And so we're going to need a new kind of power source, and they have it. Believe me, I know a lot of people that are working on free energy devices right now that make practical sense. They can tell you over the phone how it works. And it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like I just described. Yeah. So I think that's where we're headed. It's a totally Aquarian thing to have, your village can be all powered up by a free energy device, and we can, use the AI to do all of the tedious tasks that we used to do, and then we can turn ourselves into great gardeners and cooks and artists, and let the creative potential of the human race really unfold here, free of the shackles of the machine industrial complex of the Piscean age.
It seems like what's occurring, everything that will unfold is inevitable, and the control system and the powers that be, it's just some sort of reaction to attempt to stay in control, but they're already headed into the era where they're out of control. So everything that we're seeing with this new age is inevitable, and they're going to lose power, and everything that they yield control over will crumble.
Absolutely. It's exactly what's going to happen. And that's why they're so desperate right now, and why they look so desperate. People that are strong and resilient don't do desperate things. They've already figured everything out. So they're scared. They're really scared. And we're not. We're not scared. So it's like, I know we're going to win, and I know that their systems will fail, and because they're too big. And everybody, Terence McKenna once said something I've never forgot. I never didn't understand at the time. It was like maybe 1990. He said, "Jay, everything is going to happen at once." And I said, "What does that mean?" He said that they bottle up everything, and then it's all going to be unbottled all at the same time, and the entire future will happen instantly, because all the bottled up stuff will all emerge at the same time, and we're all comparing notes, and we're using the AI to our advantage, and that helps us compare notes, and the AI is going to help us make these machines. So I don't know. I hate to see the next 5 years, because they're going to be bloody and deadly. But I think after that, we're going to come out. We're going to be all right.
Yeah, it seems like we're going through some growing pains, and I'm very hopeful for the future, just from the sheer amount of people that I've noticed, like you said, awakening and becoming aware of some of this stuff. So very, very interesting times we're in. I love it, Jay. Great conversation. Before you head out, let everyone know where they can find all your work.
Yeah, it's Jay Weidner, my name.com. And I'm on Reality Check on YouTube. I have a show. And I've got a new movie coming out, JFKX, Solving the Crime of the Century, which is a killer documentary. And I mean it. And it's a film that Hollywood could never produce, like we were saying earlier. So get ready for that one. And I have a trilogy of films coming out. So this is just first of three. And I'm working with Ryder Lee. He's the director editor, and I'm the writer producer of the three films that we're going to be making. So very exciting.
Excellent. Very exciting. Jay, thank you so much. We're going to have to do this again. Always a great conversation. And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We'll talk again tomorrow. We'll see y'all then. All right. Fantastic. We got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
All right. Yeah, this will go out later. I'll send you the links when I get it up.
Thank you, man. Talk to you.
All right. Take it easy.